Why does my dog seem fine and then suddenly explode? A couple of episodes ago, I explained you that Kiwi, my service dog nowadays, wasn't always like this. That there was a time when just thinking about going out with her made me anxious. That she broke every tool I had. That I had been working professionally with dogs for 6 years and nothing I knew worked for her, for us. What changed wasn't just the technique, what changed was that I finally learned to understand and to see what she had been telling me all along. And that's what is this episode about. How can I improve my dog's behavioral problems? What is the connection between all the different behavioral problems my dog has and why do they all seem to come from the same place? Because they do. Every single one of them. The explosion, the ignored treats, the hyperactivity after exercise, the chaos at the door, the stealing, the failed recall, they are all different expressions of the same thing. Behavior is not the problem, it's the message. And once you understand that, really understand it and really understand what is happening in your dogs, inside your dog, you stop trying to fix the behavior and you start listening to what's underneath it and you start seeing real change. We have covered a lot of ground together, why your dog's explosion didn't start where you thought it did, why treats stopped working when you needed them the most, why exercise doesn't produce calm, why the greeting ritual matters more than anyone told you, and why stealing and guarding happen, and why stealing food keeps happening, and why your dog hasn't learned to stop. Different situations, different questions, and same answer underneath every single one. Behavior is not the problem, it is the message. Remember the iceberg that we saw, behavior is just the 10%, the 90% the emotion or emotions that are causing the behavior that we have to focus on. What signs does my dog send before he reacts? And why do most people miss them? Because most people were taught to respond to the explosion, not to what came before it. But dogs do not suddenly explode, they escalate through signals that they are subtle, quiet and easy to miss. Until you know what you're looking for, your dog has been sending those signals all along. The problem was never that he wasn't communication. And let me tell you something. If your dog, and this can happen, has been trying to communicate a lot and you are not responding to those communication, those signs that he's giving you, there is going to be a moment where your dog is going to stop communicating. And there are dogs that their communication, it's more easily to see than others. For example, Yuki, my Japanese Akita, he was serious and his communication was cold. You had to look very, very close to understand it. And Kiwi, for example, my Kelpie, my Australian Kelpie, my service dog, she communicates a lot. She's a ball of energy and communication. But it's hard to miss it. But the problem was that nobody taught you how to understand your dog properly and how to see what is happening before the reaction. Because your dog has been sending you a message for a long time, before the explosion, before the reaction, before the moment everything falls apart. And the problem is that most of us were never taught to understand it. We were taught to respond to the explosion, to correct the bark, to manage the lunge, to stop the behavior that we can see. But dogs do not suddenly explode, they escalate. Remember the glass of water that we had in some of the episodes, that it keeps filling until the dog explodes. So with all these feelings, your dog is going to be giving you signals. You have to be learning to what is happening there. So through these signals, that sometimes are stable, are quiet, are easy to miss until you know what you are looking for. We have different signs in dogs, and we have one sign that are calming signals in dogs. What are these calming signals in dogs, and how do I recognize my dog's signals? The calming signals before your dog reacts are the language your dog uses before the explosion. A slight turn of the head, a lip lick that has nothing to do with food, a yawn opening his mouth that has nothing to do with being tired, a body that shifts almost quickly, eyes that goes from soft to fixed. These are not random. This is your dog communicating. He's saying something to you. I'm not comfortable. I need more space. I'm trying to manage this. but I can't. I need your help. What happens when I ignore my dog's calming signals? What happens when I do not understand my dogs? And what happens when I do not understand my dog's emotions? Well, when your dog gives you calming signals and they are ignored over and over, two things can happen. Either he learns to escalate faster, louder, and more intensely because that's the only signal that ever gets a response, or he goes quiet. He starts trying, he shuts down, and shutdowns look like calm from the outside, but it isn't calm. It's a dog who learned that communication doesn't work. That's not emotional regulation. That's a dog who gave up trying to be with you. When those signals go unheard long enough, consistently enough, your dog is going to stop giving you signs, not because he has learned to regulate, but because he has learned that this communication doesn't work and that you are not there for him. How do I understand my dog's signs? And how does understanding my dog's signals actually change his behavior, and why does it work when nothing else does? Because you stop arriving at the explosion and start intervening at the signal, before the threshold is crossed, before the glass overflows, before the emotion level reaches 4 or 5. And if you haven't seen previous episodes, go watch them because I explain everything. And what happens when you start responding to your dog signals? That your dog is going to learn that when he says something, you are there, that you are listening. Before he responds with more explosion and with more reactivity, he's going to be looking at you. Do not miss those signs, because your dog keeps looking at you. He's always attentive to you. And if he's not, it's because you have been missing him long enough. Try to start watching at your dog and understand the signals that he's giving you. Let your dog understand that he doesn't need to escalate to be heard. That changes your relationship, and not because you have been only trained better, but because you have started listening. When you learn to read, people say read, but I say understand those signals, something fundamental shifts. You stop arriving to the explosion and you start intervening at the signal. Before the threshold is closed, before the glass is overflows, you see the lip leak, you create distance, you give your dog the space that he needs to be able to manage that situation, and his nervous system settles, the threshold stays intact, and your dog learns something that he has never learned before, that you are there for him and that you're going to be supporting him and that he doesn't need to explode. Go check previous episodes, but there is something that it's the level of control and self-control that your dog has, and control is something that it's your dog knows that what he does can interfere on the environment. So for example, I might know, your dog might learn that he doesn't need to react so the other dog gets away, because you're going to be giving him distance. And next time, what is going to happen when your dog learns and he has these skills, he's going to be giving the distance himself. He's not going to be responding. He might be looking at you and he might be choosing the path. That's what my dog Kiwi does when she doesn't want to say hi. She knows that she gives distance. So the dog is here and Kiwi doesn't want to, some dogs she wants to say hi, some others no. It's okay, she gives distance. She knows that I am there for her, and when she needs, I tell her, no, we continue. I understand her and I evaluate and I see before the reaction happens. Because once the reaction happens, go check previous episodes if you haven't, once your dog has reached level 4 or 5, remember that is going to leave an emotional print on your dog's brain, and you will have to remove that print, and you will have to remove your dog's residual stress. So once your dog has reached that level, the only thing that you can do is take your dog out of that situation and help him remove that residual stress. But in order to be able to help your dog really improve the behavior, you need to help him before. Where does real change in dog's behavior actually happen? How can I help my dog improve his behavior? Why working at the explosion is not working? Why my dog is not responding to me when he has barked? Well, real change happens in the middle, in the signals, in the window before the threshold is crossed. That's where you still have influence. That's where your dog is with you, where your dog can still receive what you are offering. Remember the lion. Working at the explosion is working at the end of the story. Working at the signals is working at the beginning, where everything can still be changed. And I want to go back again to the lion. Remember that we have a way to evaluate with the emotion. I always have a problem saying this in English. Emotional congruence law, okay? Go check the episode if you need, where the lion, there is a lion here and I'm offering you a muffin and you cannot get it. This is also what is happening with your dog. So you can evaluate, not just guess, when your dog is going above those thresholds and where you can help your dog. So think of it like a timeline. On one end, what nobody sees, the build up, the signals, the quiet communication that's been happening all along. In the middle, the signals, the moments that are still readable, still actionable, still within your window. On the other end, the explosion, where most training tries to work. Real change doesn't happen at the explosion, it happens in the middle, in signals, in the window before the threshold is crossed. That's where you have real influence, and that's where you can help your dog. And remember, you can evaluate, we do not guess. How did Kiwi, my own dog, went from impossible to my service dog? How can your dog really change his behavior? How did Kiwi went from a dog who took me out of my comfort zone to my certified service dog who comes with me almost everywhere? And it was not just through better techniques, not through more training, through learning and listening to what she was telling me all along, to learn to see what was inside of her, the communication, the emotions that she was having, the explosion. She was a ball of emotions that I was missing because I was so focused. And remember that I was a professional dog trainer already for 6 years, helping families from all over the world. But I learned that there are emotions, the 90%, under what we are seeing, that is just the 10%, those emotions that were causing the behaviors. And I was a professional dog trainer focusing on the behaviors and missing all these 90%. And understanding it, identifying it, and working on that 90%, reinforcing our relationship is what took us from those moments where I was super nervous about thinking of going out to going out with her everywhere, understanding her, and which is even more important, Kiwi has the tools. She's been empowered to know how to behave and to know how to cope with her emotions. Because again, go watch the episodes if you need. Emotions are not bad. Emotions do not disappear. And our dogs do not choose what to feel when they see a situation, context, or a stimulus. The emotion appears. As I said, go check previous episodes. But the emotion is involuntary. It appears. And it depends on the skills, inner skills, our relationship, and our communication. Our dog is going to be able to choose what to do with that emotion or give a responsive behavior, a behavior that he cannot just choose. He's going to be responding reactively. So emotions are not bad. And I want to say again that we do not reinforce emotions. We help our dogs go through the emotions. I come back to an example that I used also in previous episodes. If my son has a fear of going down a ski hill when he was more little, I'm not going to let my son all alone in the ski hill. I'm going to be there. I'm going to tell him that I am here for him and we're going to go through this together. And it's the same with your dog. And this is how understanding your dog, understanding his emotions, understanding his communication, and creating a communication code that is for both of you is going to make you and your dog help transform that reaction, that reactivity, that fear, that anxiety, the behavior that doesn't seem to change, the behavior that you keep focusing on trying to change, getting a treat when your dog sees the person that scares him or the dog that scares him, and you ask your dog to sit and wait and hold stable until the person works, or when you get a treat and you ask your dog when he has already exploded to get the treat and sit. That's why it's not working. I hope that with all these 6 episodes, now today 7th episode, you understand better. You know what to do. You know that your dog is not being a bad dog, that you do not need to get mad at your dog, that you have to be yourself, that your dog doesn't need to be perfect, that you do not need to be perfect either. What your dog needs is you. Your dog has his neuronal mirrors, and you have to be the calm in your dog's life so he can absorb your emotions. You are in this together and you are a team. What is the most important thing to understand about my dog's behavior? That your dog is not a behavior problem to solve. He's been with an emotional world that is constantly communicating. Your dog needs to cope with his emotions. The explosion is the last resort. The reaction is the overflow. The behavior you see is the final signal of something that started long before. When you start looking there at the 90% that was always invisible, everything change. And this is why I have a waiting list of months for the last couple of years in Geneva, because we look at our dog's inside. Your dog is not a behavioral problem to solve. Your dog is trying to cope with his emotions and the emotions that he is feeling. Everything changes when you start looking to who your dog really is. What should I do after watching this series? Watch the next episode, because you're gonna have a master class that I'm gonna be explaining more things about your dog's behavior, about what you can do, and about your dog's training. And you can download any of my free guides. You can come into my mailing list. I am here for you. You can be asking me. We have a community where you can be asking questions, okay? But I want you to start looking at your dog inside, not just focusing on the behavior, not feeling guilty, and not thinking that your dog is a bad dog. Okay, stop looking for tips here and there and trying one thing and then another thing and techniques that do not work and get mad at your dog. This is the 7th episode, and I hope these episodes have helped you, and you have all the links in the descriptions. If you want to know more, go watch the masterclass.